Your interest in sports cars, English sports cars, Italian sports cars, has really seemed to have grown since about 1990 on.
Well, when I was a kid, I never understood why you'd buy a Lotus Elan with 125 horsepower for $4,500 when you could get a 300 or 400 horsepower Corvette for $3,800. Because when you're a kid, it's all...
He's the guy that bought the Lotus Elan.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. But I mean,
Yeah.
your mind is all thinking just how fast it can go. And then once you drive a Lotus, you get a little more sophisticated. Oh, it's motor car than just going in a straight line. It's handling and stopping and all that kind of stuff. So that's sort of why I got into it. Plus, it's a matter of efficiency and things like that, you know, unusual designs. Everybody kind of does everything the same way now, but in the early days, everybody experimented with different things, and it's fun to collect those and see how they work. I mean, that car right over there, 1934, Frazer Nash. They call that the chain gang because it doesn't have a traditional transmission. You have a series of chains, and it's like a 10-speed bike. You just once you move, you just pull the lever and you jump to the next chain. So that was the fastest accelerating car that the English magazine, The Motor, had ever tested up to 1934 because there was, you didn't put the, you just slam shifted through the gearbox. Even though it's only 1,500 cc's, it's a twin overhead cam and it's a 6-cylinder. So it's actually quite fast and quite light.
And what year are we talking about?
1934.
34.
Frazer Nash, yeah.
Has there ever been a vehicle that kind of surprised you, either good or bad?
I always was fascinated by Voisin. Gabriel Voisin was one of those French characters. The Wright brothers were the first to sort of fly. Gabriel Voisin was the first guy to stand next to an airplane, pull up, hit the propeller, start it, get in the plane, fly, take off, and then land in the same place. That's what he considered. So they sort of threw rocks at each other for years. Yeah. And he developed lightweight, a lot of aeronautical themes to his cars, and they were really interesting. And I always wanted a Voisin, and I found one up in Santa Barbara, and the guy was asking $125,000. It's since gone for like $1.3 million or something. But I drove it, it was awful, because being a sleeve valve, well, the way a sleeve valve works, there's no valve, the cylinder turns. There's openings as it comes down, it turns and lets in the fuel, then seals it off, and then as the piston rises, it fires, and then it comes down, then the exhaust, then it turns again, then the exhaust goes out. And they're extremely smooth, extremely quiet, but they smoke. That's what they're supposed to do. So, you know, people just chase you with pitchforks, and especially in California. I mean, it's just not, you sit a lot of people, hey, your car smells, and you know, they're not wrong. You know, so, all right, so besides being a bit slow, it was a fascinating car from an engineering standpoint and a design standpoint. A lot of lightweight things. You know, the French are different than the rest of the world. You know, all the other cars are industrial areas, Stuttgart, Detroit, Modena. France, everything comes out of Paris, the city of lights. You know, it's like intellectualism and, you know, artists doing cars as opposed to engineers doing cars. So, and they do everything differently. You know, we do 6mm, 8mm, 10mm. The French do 7mm, 9mm, 5mm. I mean,
they do it on purpose, Jay.
But you know, they're here, but they're different than all the people that surround them. So I just find it interesting. You know, the French focus more on comfort rather than handling and stuff. And you sit in a Citroen, there is no more advanced car or comfortable car to drive in. So that's what I like, just things that are unusual, things that are different.
Okay, I got to ask you about the Tornado. That's been in the family a long time. You get to play with it much? Because I know GM has smiled on that one.
I bought a used Tornado for $800, and we converted it to rear-wheel drive. And I thought when it came out it was a fascinating car, because the French and the Italians, the Europeans always said you could never put more than 200 horsepower through the front wheels, or the thing would just torque steer and go down the street. Well, the Tornado had 375 horsepower through the front wheels, and it was fine. A guy named North designed that car, and I just like the fact that if you put it anywhere in the world, even people who know nothing about cars will go, well, that's an American car. There's something about the character of it. It's big, it looks American, it's brash. You know, don't forget, we're on our way to the moon. Right. But, you know, the space program, I mean, everything was just you know, firing on all cylinders, all that kind of stuff. So we had these bold, innovative cars coming out. It was the first front-wheel drive car since the Accord. And it was a huge success. But when you see them now, they look like mastodons in the tar pits. You know, they're all rusted, and you know the suspension is collapsed, and they just sort of, you see them by the side of the road. But when you take it and clean it up, you realize there's pure design there. It's really interesting with the flat floor and the whole thing. And I wanted to build one, and we realized we couldn't put 1,000 horsepower through the front wheels because it has that chain drive system. Couldn't take the power. So we built our own chassis, put a Corvette transaxle, converted it to rear-wheel drive, and it dynos at 1,076 horse.
Does it really?
Oh, yeah,
I knew
yeah.
it was strong.
Yeah, so it runs nice, but it's a proper car. It handles and it stops and it drives very nicely. Yeah.
Of all this stuff in here, how much interest does Mavis, your wife, how much interest does
Well,
she show?
I mean, as much interest I show in the Bronte sisters, or you learn. I believe opposites attract. You know,
Poor girl.
I mean, I go to these shows and I see the husband and wife have matching Mustang outfits. You know, and I go, that's not going to work. you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the fact that she has interest. So when I go, I hear things from her, and I can sound more intelligent. And you know, when she has her car, and the women ask, "Oh, well, you know, so she knows a little something about cars." So it works out fine. I mean,
balances.
she enjoys going to the car shows and driving in the cars, but she doesn't have a lot of interest in
Got it.
working on them or borrowing them.
Notoriously, you don't sell anything.
No,
You have a collection.
No, I don't
you
sell
just
anything.
don't sell anything.
Well, what we do is every year we usually auction something off for Wounded Warriors or one of those charities, the firefighters, the fires in California, something like that.